that is fun to play pranks on people, but not cyber attack them. So without further ado, we got a lot to cover today, and I don't have a lot of time to be doing the show today. So we're going to jump right into it. Remember, the chat's open. We are monitoring the chat. So if you want to throw us some love in there, we'd appreciate it. But also, if you have any questions, anything you want to discuss, throw it in the chat. And there's also the comments down below that are going to be open as well. So we appreciate all the engagement that you give us during the live stream. And then as you watch these recordings, we also appreciate it there. We appreciate all the support. So continue to subscribe to the channel, like the videos, and engage with us wherever you can. A lot to talk about today. We're going to get the articles I'm going to discuss up on the screen here in a second. But there's a ton of stuff going on. As I predicted at the beginning of the year, we were going to see, and that's not the right angle, we're going to see an uptick in what I call, laws and regulations that are going to impact businesses. And here we go with breaking news today, and you're going to get my reaction here to a lot of this breaking news. We have 4 or 5 articles to discuss today that came out in the last 24 hours that I think are relevant and important to business people and cyber defenders on what's happening out there and how you can better protect yourself and really what you need to be aware of. And then also we have our threat intel report segment, which when I recreated the show, we only had 2, and then 2 came in hot off the wire as I was ready to go live. So I've included those in the video as well, and we'll have to add those into the YouTube description later on after we're done recording, because they're not, I don't believe they're listed at this time. And we'll touch on those. They have to do with an Apple vulnerability and a Palo Alto vulnerability. So you're going to want to stay tuned towards the end for those threat intelligence updates that we give you as part of this programming. And here we go. In this UK cyber bill, which I don't think we're going to see too many countries that are not going to follow suit here. It's just a matter of figuring out what's the best way to kind of roll this stuff out to most businesses, most private businesses. The US seems to be doing it through things like CMMC and other other businesses that play in the government regulated space, rather than going directly for private businesses. But here we go. We have this UK government that's going directly after that, which is all kinds of private businesses and requiring them to do more around cybersecurity and cyber resilience. So they've introduced a bill aimed at protecting critical national infrastructure and digital services. These key measures include expanding regulatory oversight, mandating incident reporting, and empowering regulators to address emerging threats dynamically. The bill also proposes bringing data centers under regulatory scope to ensure security and resilience without imposing significant compliance costs. I mean, hopefully those data centers are already doing the right thing. I mean, at the end of the day, you should be evaluating where you're putting your data and, hardware that stores that data if that's what you're doing. And there should be certain certifications and certain minimums that you require of these providers. Like here in the US, we have a SOC 2 certification. Having a SOC 2 Type 2 is kind of like the minimum requirement, I would say, for a data center to have, and it should go up from there. There's other compliance frameworks you can follow for data centers, but that's a popular one. ISO is also another one that is popular. But the bill, as I said, expands this regulatory oversight to include data centers, managed service providers, MSPs, and that's a big one there, and supply chains, requiring them to meet stricter security standards and report incidents within 24 hours. This is a significant step in addressing vulnerabilities in critical infrastructure and digital services, right? MSPs are a hot button topic when it comes to cybersecurity and compliance because, quite frankly, a lot of times when we deal with cyber attacks, MSPs are involved, or they are the IT provider for the company that is being impacted. So, I'm not too bashful to say that at this point in time, MSPs are going to, be under a microscope here as these regulations roll out. And I'm going to talk about, a significant risk to MSPs in one of my stories later on that covers a popular tool that MSP uses and how that's being used to exploit their customers. And MSPs need to do a better job of not only understanding a lot of this stuff, because the reason I pulled that story out, wanted to talk about it, is because I saw a lot of chatter in the different groups that I belong to about or rumors being, almost, I would call them rumors, being spread around this vulnerability and potentially the company itself being hacked. And none of that was true. It was really just MSPs not understanding what was happening in their environments and then them blaming the company instead of blaming or looking at themselves. So we're going to talk about that and how and why MSPs can be a real dumpster fire if for your organization, if you have compliance needs. You want to focus on the bill is going to require these organizations to focus on supply chain security, to kind of go above and beyond just their own security, and adopt frameworks like Cyber Essentials, which is part of a UK cybersecurity framework, similar to the NIST cybersecurity framework that a lot of Americans might be familiar with. So some of the key takeaways from what they're requiring is early incident reporting. They feel that that'll help mitigate cascading risk across industries, meaning if they see something in one industry, maybe they can put up defenses or allow cyber defenders to understand what the indicators of compromise are so they can detect these things before they become a real problem. But the early incident reporting seems to be a favorite among regulators because they feel like it gives them an advantage to deal with the problem if it ever goes widespread. There's some interesting data to back that thought process up. But a lot of times these cyber criminals act so quickly that these early incident reporting requirements don't really have too much impact. We saw that with the MoveIt breach. We see that now with the Clio vulnerability that's being exploited. These are all things that help in a way, but I think from the regulator side, it's more of a hope and a prayer that if we can force people to give us information earlier, we might be able to do something with it, as opposed to companies who just don't tell anybody they ever got attacked, and then nobody ever knows, and then we can't learn off of that information. I think information sharing, I do believe that is key in terms of dealing with these problems and understanding how we can learn off of each other. And these incidents, like I'm doing on this video today, is trying to give you insight based on incidents that we know of in the public and my reaction to them. So moving right along, we have this other article that I thought was kind of interesting. It caught my attention anyway, and it's floating around out there, and you might see it. Before we go too deep into it, this is satire. This is not a legitimate person who thinks that we have licked the ransomware problem. Excuse me one second. I have to take a drink. Sorry about that. But yeah, this is a very interesting satirical article that ransomware is still a growing threat with increasing payouts. And why I wanted to bring this up is because there are reports from time to time that come out for various reasons that certain organizations or certain people may do studies during a time frame or a short period of time. Typically, it's over a quarter, where we start to see articles written where they think that they're ahead of ransomware, we're ahead of this problem, or we're out of the woods on this problem, and nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, if my opinion is we're just at the beginning of these types of problems, and they're only going to get more frequent and more devastating as these cyber criminals perfect and figure things out along the way, as they're doing every day. With the prevalence of ransomware as a service and other like phishing as a service, as I talked about yesterday, all these kind of as a service platforms that are being created to, help this cyber criminal industry that is, quite frankly, if you want to get a job in cybersecurity, if you want to see where most of the money is in cybersecurity, well, it's mostly with the cyber criminals. That's the sad part. The reality of it is the money should be budgeted towards businesses paying actual cybersecurity companies and cyber defenders. And I know it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn here because that's who I am, but just look at the numbers. There's more spent on cyber criminals than there are on legitimate cybersecurity companies, and it's fact. And until we understand that we need to spend a significant amount of money on this, way more than it's being spent today, you're going to see these cyber criminals who are well funded as a result continue to improve their processes, continue to look for ways to be more efficient. And that is what this story breaks down. It is like, we're not even close to eradicating this. We are so far from that. It's the complete opposite. And that's basically what this article is highlighting, that businesses need to invest in robust backup solutions and cyber protections and train their employees to counter these ransomware attacks. Cyber defenders need to emphasize to their organizations more and more that they need to do more, that they need to be the leaders and champions that the C-suite refuses to be because they don't think it's necessary. They just want to delegate all this IT stuff to their IT people. And that's not a winning strategy when it comes to cybersecurity and compliance. And ransomware eradication, getting ahead of it, it's all myth. Anytime you read anything that says we're getting ahead of ransomware because of this, because of that, or because of the other thing. There were stories at the end of 2024 in December that I talked about on my podcasts, Security Squawk, and on this channel, where I'm reading articles where they're like, oh, ransomware payments went down. Well, that's not the first time in history that year over year ransomware payments went down. They go down for various reasons. Maybe a group decides to go in hiding. Maybe the authorities are hot on the trails of multiple groups that forces them to kind of curtail their activities for a little while. What happened at the end of 2024 was pretty simple. They thought they were getting ahead of it. They were like, oh, ransomware payments are going down. But the reality of it is they weren't getting ahead of it. Cyber attackers changed their tactics to no longer waste any kind of time with cyber criminals or with companies that get hacked who don't want to negotiate a ransom at all. So let's say they attack 5 companies and 3 of those companies don't want to negotiate at all and 2 do. Well, they're going to just kind of abandon the 3 companies that don't want to talk to them, let them recover on their own, and they'll continue to negotiate with the 2 that do. So as a result, you see ransomware kind of payments overall go down, but the per hit per business goes up because these ransomware groups still want to make money. And instead of making money off all 5 companies and they can only make money off 2, economics tells you they're going to raise their fee in order for you to get out of your problem that they think they're going to help you solve. And I say that tongue in cheek because if you've ever read a ransomware note, they basically say to you, hey, we're here to basically help you do cybersecurity better. And we broke into your system and you should pay us as a result. So that's the deal. Appreciate the support there, Sentil. Your message was retracted. I don't know why, but appreciate you chiming in there. And gonna pull up my next topic here, which is this ransomware attack through an IP camera. Interesting one. People don't take this seriously enough that we see this a lot, and it's scary that these IP cameras, they exist. Whether or not they were made in a certain country or not is kind of irrelevant for the purposes of what I'm discussing on the show today. But at the end of the day, these IP cameras, they're really they really can become a problem, because not only are they usually chock full of vulnerabilities, a lot of these companies can be fly by night, where they don't stick around long enough to support the cameras long term. So you end up, having cameras that are either shipped or eventually over time end up with a massive amount of vulnerabilities that cyber criminals are figuring out. Like, these things are all over the place. They're plugged into networks everywhere, and nobody really even thinks about them. I guess people either are willing to risk the fact that these devices sit on their main network, or the network that everything else is on. But hint, hint, you should segregate these devices on your network and do not run them on the same network as, say, where your data is stored and all your critical assets remain, because they use these things in various ways to impact companies, whether it be a DDoS attack, a denial of service attack, or exploiting them to move laterally in your network to then eventually deploy ransomware on your whole entire company. These are things that we see happen all the time. Attackers exploit these vulnerabilities in these IP cameras, outdated firmware, to install ransomware on the surveillance device. And that serves as a foothold for encrypting other devices on your network, like servers, backups, and your laptops and computers. This highlights the risk posed by unsecured IoT devices and emphasizes the importance of isolating these devices, making sure you have a plan to update the firmware regularly, and employing endpoint detection and response tools, combined with a security and operations center behind the scenes who are watching to see if anybody is messing around with these devices. These are all important. And it really doesn't matter what brand or what flavor of camera it is, as I mentioned. Like, we see, and it really doesn't matter if it's a camera. It could be, this article points out it's cameras. Cameras are a huge problem. But think about TVs. The TVs you buy, you connect them to your Wi-Fi. You plug the network cable into them to make them a smart TV, right? And most businesses, sorry, one second. Most businesses put these TVs in, and unfortunately, they don't realize that these TVs are only updated for like 3 years at most, and then the TV companies stop supporting them. They stop putting out updates to them, and then year 4 and 5, these TVs start to accumulate vulnerabilities that security researchers and other hackers discover along the way. So these devices turn out to be a massive problem for companies when they plug them in and they don't handle them properly. And it's a huge problem that we come across all the time. If we're going to find a vulnerability when we're doing a pen test or some kind of a risk assessment for companies, it's usually going to be on one of these kinds of devices. So have a plan for this stuff. Evaluate your network, identify where all these things exist, make sure that you know that you have them on your network, and decide whether they should be there, or maybe segregate it to a separate network where other things like IoT devices can run without potentially interfering with or causing a problem with your servers and other important critical assets. So isolate them and make sure you have a plan to get them updated, and make sure you know how to update them. Document that process. Make sure somebody's responsible for it. And I would say, at a minimum, check quarterly that these devices are running the latest firmware and software provided by the manufacturers. These are the ways that you can defend against these types of issues that come about. And make sure you just treat IoT devices as potential entry points for attackers. A lot of these devices, communicate with the internet in some way, shape, or form, whether that's sending video files to servers, or just, being able to send you alerts and things like that. And because of that capability, it exposes them to the internet. Even though you might be behind a firewall, you have to be concerned with things like reverse shell proxies and other things that cyber criminals can figure out along the way that circumvent your firewalls to get to these types of devices from the internet. So it's really important. You need to monitor these things. You need to keep them updated. And if they are a problem, if they do contain a vulnerability that you cannot address, you seriously need to get them on its own network and keep them separate from everything else. So appreciate it. So most companies are thinking IP cameras are inside a LAN, so the attacker couldn't attack this device, but they didn't understand after the persistence, the attacker will discover the attack. Yeah, that you can add the persistence, but you, as I mentioned, you can do a reverse shell proxy attack on these devices if you know certain web addresses and things like that they make calls to as part of their firmware, and you can attack those communications if you know how to do how to do those things and kind of create either man in the middle type of attacks or, like I said, reverse shell proxies on these devices, which are 100%. These aren't things that they're not. It's not script kiddie stuff, but it's stuff that any hacker worth his weight can figure out how to do, and it's very easy to do on these types of devices, in my opinion. So moving right along, we have our next topic, which goes into what I mentioned earlier about the state of MSPs and what's kind of going on out there as MSPs play a part in this cyber defense for companies, playing roles in things like making sure companies are compliant with certain regulations like CMMC, and now they're going to play a role in this UK stuff. And unfortunately, not all MSPs and IT companies are created equal, and a lot of MSPs out there are really faking it. And the term "fake it till you make it." Well, they're never going to make it, and they're just going to fake it. They aren't doing the necessary things to up-level their team, their company, their staff. They're kind of just showing up every day and doing the same old, and they're not getting smart and in tune to what's happening out there in terms of compliance, in terms of data regulations, and really helping their clients understand frameworks and following those frameworks. And you can see examples of that play out when you see things like this. And this is that killing ransomware group, and they have affiliates running around, and these are the initial access brokers that run around in front of them, who essentially break in the networks. And once they break in, then they hire the killing guys to come in and deploy the ransomware and deal with that aspect of it, meaning they deploy the software, they encrypt as many files as they can, and then they begin, once they deploy that, then they handle the ransomware negotiation all the way through to the payment, which they collect on behalf of the affiliate, and the affiliate gets paid upwards to 50 to 90% of the ransomware payment for breaking in. And these affiliates are using a spear phishing campaign on MSPs to target their Screen Connect admin credentials, and then they hit their customers who use that software. So MSPs use this tool called Screen Connect. It's a remote access tool. So if they want to remote into your employees' computers to help them with computer problems that they might be having, or administer a server or something that they do on behalf of your company as part of their IT contract, very popular for them to use a tool like Screen Connect. TeamViewer is another tool that's similar to this. There's tons of them out there that you can use, but Screen Connect's very popular. And what this attack does is they send phishing emails to MSPs who, again, MSPs should not be using admin level credentials as a daily driver. Like, you should be using your admin Screen Connect login on a rare occasion when you need to update that software, you need to perform maintenance on the actual Screen Connect instance. Other than that, you should have other accounts, other usernames and passwords set up for users. And quite frankly, breaking it down so not every user account has access to every single device in your Screen Connect instance give those technicians or give those engineers or people in your company the access to the clients that they work with, and don't give them access to other ones. What this attack requires is somebody using an admin level account on the Screen Connect to get into the server and then exploit it. And the problem here is the major problem here is that Screen Connect and using the admin credential is a really bad idea. That gives it full access. But the issue that we see with most MSPs, and why I'm calling it out today, is that most MSPs use these types of accounts. We've seen it where MSPs have assigned all the users that log into their Screen Connect as admins, just because it's easier. They don't have to deal with permission problems, or why can't this person see this, or why can't that person see that, right? It's just easier just to make them an admin so they can have access to everything. And a lot of people run around thinking that's okay, and unfortunately it's not. And we are seeing this killing group be very successful with these Screen Connect phishing campaigns that target your Screen Connect, and you think you're logging into Screen Connect as your admin, but it's really a fake page set up by cyber criminals to look like your Screen Connect and have you log in and steal your credentials. So make sure you have 2FA turned on. Hopefully you don't give up that code as part of the process, but if you do, they have the algorithm and they can reverse engineer that code to figure out what your MFA algorithm is and continue to log in. So you have to change your MFA, you have to change your username and password. And if you become a victim of something like this, and you should also go through and evaluate who has access to what, as part of your process if you have to go through this. So pretty big deal. It's going to be a problem for a lot of MSPs because Killen, which is a very successful ransomware group, is all over this, and they are going to exploit it like crazy. So moving right along, I'm going to try to move quick here. We have CrushFTP vulnerability. This is similar to the MoveIt vulnerability, the MoveIt and Clio attacks. This is just going to be another early one that we're seeing early on. So if you are a person who supports a company or customer that uses CrushFTP, you're going to want to get on this vulnerability quickly. It's a authentication bypass vulnerability. It's being actively exploited using, there's a proof of concept code that's publicly available, and attackers gain unauthorized access via exposed HTTPS ports. So that's port 443. Immediate patching is recommended, along with enabling DMZ configurations as a temporary mitigation if you cannot get that server updated. So CrushFTP users, you're gonna want to get on this right away and get your systems updated, because as we know, the cyber criminals love to jump all over these types of things, especially early on, and get that initial persistent access. You might not get hit right away, but typically what we see is they get access and they bury themselves in with some kind of backdoor or other way in, so that if you do patch it, they still have another way to get in. And then next warning I want you to be aware of is CISA, who released a warning on Cisco Smart Licensing Utility Credential Vulnerability. This was actually a licensing vulnerability that came out in 2024, but we are seeing that exploitation being observed in the wild as of today, emphasizing the need for immediate patching on this stuff, guys. It's been well over 6 months since this vulnerability was released. It's CVE 2024-20439 on the Cisco Smart Licensing Utility. Allows attackers to gain administrative access through hard-coded credentials that are within the operating system. Never good when your publicly facing or your edge devices have hard-coded credentials embedded in the software, but it's not the first time we've seen something like that. Just goes along to my point that we buy technology that's chock full of problems, and we have to deal with them once we acquire them. So pay attention to this stuff. know that this is out here. If you use Cisco Smart Licensing, please be aware that you need to update this software, and it should have been updated a while ago, but hackers have figured out that we are not updating this stuff, so they are going to run rampant and exploit this stuff like crazy. So let me flip around here. I got a bunch of tabs out of order. So this one is a very interesting one, and the last one before we jump into our threat intel report. We have phishing incidents targeting students, and I found this one kind of interesting. Students at Capilano University fell victim to a phishing scam demanding $850 for outstanding tuition fees. And attackers use email spoofing techniques to impersonate the university. IT teams purge the malicious emails, but are investigating how attackers access student email addresses. So essentially, somebody got their hands on the email addresses of all the students at this school, set up email spoofing techniques to make it look like it's coming from the university, and they're tricking students into paying for this stuff. This can happen at any company, right? These are things that we see happen all the time where companies receive invoices and it looks like it came from their company, but it really came from the outside. And there's various things that you can set up, email filtering that goes through this stuff to look to see if it came from trusted IP addresses that you set up on behalf of your company, meaning like, hey, if an email comes in and it didn't come from this 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 IP addresses that we know and trust and that we send email from these addresses, these are easy ways that you can mark and identify email as potentially malicious because it didn't come from one of your trusted servers or resources. These are all things that cyber defenders should and can stand up as part of their protections for their end users. Kind of easy to do depending on what email platform you're on. Microsoft 365 makes this fairly easy to do. But there's other third-party email filtering tools that will also do the same thing. We'll evaluate where the email is coming from, and it will assess the email, and it may deliver the email to the recipient still, but it's going to come with all kinds of banners and warnings on it saying, pay attention to this because it didn't come from a trusted place and we think it's suspicious. You also have the option of just blocking that email from coming to your users in the first place. If it didn't come from one of our email servers, we're not going to let it come through if it's, if it has our domain as the from. So these are all ways you can deal with these types of problems, but these types of scams come into businesses all kinds of different ways, all the way from, hey, just send us money, to, hey, here's your invoice, and it's an invoice from a company that you commonly do business with, so you don't even think twice, and they change the bank account number at the bottom of that invoice that you're to use to send money to used to send money to your vendor, and it's really the bank account of, unfortunately, the cyber criminals. So that's the deal there, and that's it for what's in the news in the last 24 hours, which it kind of was a lot, to be honest with you, for all of that to come out in the last 24 hours, among all the other things that are happening and what we've already covered this week. And now we're going to get into our threat intelligence segment, where I grab a bunch of the things that my threat intelligence team is picking up on and share them with you, and react to those and let you know what you can do to deal with these problems. So the first one, I'm having trouble finding the article. So as I'm talking, I'll try to dig that up. But the first one is this phishing campaign targeting Ukrainian entities with Remco's rat. And I just wanted to bring up the fact that this Russian hacking group, Game Ardion, targeted Ukrainian organizations, but it doesn't mean that it stops there with Ukrainian organizations. This organization is using phishing emails disguised as military-related documents. So if you're involved in Department of Defense or something like that, you need to be aware that Russians are doing this, because it doesn't stop with just Ukrainians. We just have evidence that it's being heavily targeted towards Ukrainians, and the exploits are working against them, but it doesn't mean it can't happen to a U.S. defense company or something like that. These emails are delivered via LNK files or compressed in zip archives. And this campaign highlights the group's ongoing espionage efforts against Ukraine and other defense related industries. So it's really important that you understand that it's a simple email that you receive that is sent to companies. So you need to do things like blocking these risky file types. If it's not a common file that's emailed, like an LNK file is typically not something somebody emails as an attachment, right? You're usually talking about Excel files, PowerPoint files, Word documents, PDFs. So block these ridiculous file extensions from even ending up in your user's inbox. And then on top of that, monitor for unusual traffic, outbound traffic, remote access Trojans, the things that are attached to these types of attacks are definitely things that are going to cause traffic that you're normally not used to seeing happen on your network. The behaviors of these remote access Trojans are not the same behaviors that you see of a user who's just using their computer for business purposes. So if you're looking for this type of stuff, it's very easy to find it. And then once you find it, you can then simply turn around and respond to it and do something with that situation, whether it's isolate the machine and then work on kicking whoever removing the remote access Trojan or whoever has access. I finally found the article so I can display that. But the other big takeaway here, folks, is that we have geopolitical cyber threats that can have global ripple effects on your business. And if you're a defense contractor and you have CMMC requirements, I would be very in tune to the fact that these are the threat actors that are coming your way and trying to exploit your business and deploy ransomware, steal CUI or FCI. This is the reason that the DoD is so focused in on and so concerned about these types of cyber criminal groups that are out there. So next article we have is, or next report on our threat intelligence. Give me 1 second to grab the article here. It has to do with this Lazarus group. They are a group out of North Korea who likes to create a lot of havoc. And they're another, I would say, cyber criminal group that's out there that is, always evolving, always looking for ways to make money, exploit companies, governments. And, they are very good at what they do. They've been around for a long time, and they do, they do enjoy the protection of the North Korean government to carry out their attacks. And they like to target job seekers in cryptocurrency firms. And they hit them with this quick fix attack that prompts users to fix fake errors by executing malware via PowerShell commands. It's an evolution in their tactics that underscores the need for vigilance when interacting with job offers or with unfamiliar websites. So as cyber defenders, we can get ahead of this by doing things like deploying DNS filtering and web content filtering. But social engineering's attacks like this prey on, the trust of the entity on the other end. And a lot of times when people, go and apply for jobs, their trust level with that organization, goes up. They give them a little bit more trust or a little bit more benefit of the doubt because they're trying to impress them. So they think, what can I say or what should I say to, because they want to try to get a job. They don't think they're getting scammed. So while their mindset and their brain is thinking, I got to give them answers and information so I don't screw up my chances of getting this job, The reality of it is that they're being exploited by this Lazarus group. And they use this psychology. They're very good at it with fake troubleshooting prompts and things like that to get malware onto these computers. So make sure you're training your employees not to respond to things like this and not to trust unsolicited troubleshooting requests in any way, shape, or form. Any kind of message that they might get online purporting that they're with IT as part of this this scam. It's very, very easy to trick people in these situations, and these scams do exist. They can come through emails. We've seen them come through Teams messages, right? But the number one thing that they do once they get on the system is they use PowerShell to abuse and take things further. So if you can monitor or you can shut down PowerShell from even being allowed to run under these users' accounts on these systems, you're winning the battle. You're winning the game, and that's the important thing that you definitely need to keep in mind and remember here is that not all these systems need all these tools that are built into Windows like PowerShell and Command Prompt to be running 24/7. Most users don't need to run these things at all. So really consider whether you should be blocking these things from running at all, because then the cyber criminals can't live off the land and exploit the tools that are built into Windows. So final 2 points for today, folks. Two more threat reports hot off the wire here. I'll try to pull them up here real quickly. Apple, they warned of 3 0 days, disclosed 3 0 days under active exploitation. These affect a wide range of devices, including iPhones, iPads, Mac computers, and Apple Vision Pro. Various they all work 3 different ways. One is a bypass of USB restricted mode that allows physical attackers to access locked devices. That's not good. There's a WebKit flaw enabling malicious web content to escape the browser sandbox. So in other words, if there's something bad that happens inside of your browser, Apple has a mechanism to kind of pull that off to the side and evaluate it. And they are using that particular technology to deploy malicious web content to users. And then a core media vulnerability that allows privilege escalation through malicious apps. So in other words, if they can get an app on your phone, then they can, exploit this core media vulnerability on your Apple device. So you need to make sure, cyber defenders, you need to make sure, and business leaders, all your Apple devices are updated immediately to the latest version, which is 18.3 and Sequoia 15.3. Enable lockdown mode on compatible devices to reduce attack surfaces and monitor for unusual app behavior if you cannot update these devices right away. And these 0 days are a reminder that no platform is immune to this stuff. Patching and proactive monitoring are critical to deal with today's technology and the vulnerabilities that they present to ourselves and our businesses. So stay tuned, because we have another vulnerability here in our last topic of the show, and appreciate everyone's support out there today. And if you have any questions or comments, you can drop them in the live chat. But at the end of the day, this last one here is Palo Alto is we're noticing scanner activity that is indicative that somebody has found a potential threat in Palo Alto's devices. Nearly 24,000 unique IPs have been observed scanning Palo Alto's network global protect portals, with a smaller subset flagged as malicious. This activity is suggesting that there's reconnaissance going on for future exploitation of the technology and potentially new vulnerabilities being announced. The surge of activity began on March 17th. It peaked at 20,000 IPs per day, meaning different devices trying to scan this technology, and has since tapered off. So we're not sure what that means, but this did happen. So either they got what they wanted, or they were not fruitful in what they were looking for. Most scanning originated from the US and Canada. That doesn't mean anything. It could be behind a VPN or something of that effect to evade detection. So make sure you're reviewing your logs on your Palo Alto devices. Since mid-March, look for unusual activity, especially anything targeting the Global Protect portals. If you use that service, apply hardening measures. Make sure you have MFA turned on your VPNs and your user accounts, and use zero trust or IP allow listing when possible for logins and different portals that you may give your users access to. You can go as far as blocking malicious IPs identified in your logs, or you can use, like I said, zero trust and only allow traffic from those MAC addresses and IPs that you have identified and trust and know who's behind them. Spikes in scanning like this, folks, often precedes major exploits. And that's what we see time and time again. So understand, if you use Palo Alto, this could be coming. Start to prepare, get ahead of this, and start, securing your internet-facing Palo Alto devices as soon as you can, because you probably heard it here first, that this stuff is coming down the pike, and you will see very shortly an announcement that Palo Alto devices have a major vulnerability in them. So that'll do it for the show today. I appreciate everyone's support. We will be back again tomorrow with more commentary on cybersecurity threats in the news and another update from our threat intel team here at Exact. Remember, if you need help with any of this stuff, it's not hard to find us. Reach out, ask us a question, leave a comment, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.